Every time you eat sugar, your body treats it like an emergency. Hormones surge, organs scramble, and systems meant to protect you go into overdrive. When this happens occasionally, your body is remarkably capable of restoring balance. But when sugar intake becomes a daily habit, the system is forced to operate in a near-constant state of metabolic stress, quietly increasing disease risk over time. And we're not just talking about foods with sugar as an ingredient. We're talking about foods that are so processed that they instantly become sugar in your bloodstream. As the glucose floods the bloodstream, blood sugar levels rise sharply. This rapid spike sends an urgent signal to the pancreas, which responds by releasing insulin. Insulin functions like a key, allowing glucose to move from the bloodstream into cells where it can be used for energy or stored for later use. This is a normal and essential process. However, refined sugars and processed carbohydrates enter the bloodstream far faster than whole foods, creating glucose spikes that are both higher and more abrupt. Studies using continuous glucose monitoring show that highly processed foods can raise blood sugar 2 or 3 times higher than the same number of carbohydrates from whole foods. To manage this surge, the pancreas releases a large burst of insulin. Over time, repeated insulin surges cause cells to become less responsive to insulin signal. This condition, known as insulin resistance, affects an estimated 40% of U.S. adults, many of whom have not yet been diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes. As insulin resistance worsens, the pancreas compensates by producing even more insulin, placing increasing strain on the organ. Long-term studies show that years of chronic hyperinsulinemia significantly increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome. While glucose is being handled by insulin, fructose follows a different metabolic path. Fructose, which is made up of roughly half of table sugar and nearly all high fructose corn syrup, is processed almost entirely by the liver. Unlike glucose, fructose does not trigger insulin release or promote satiety hormones such as leptin. This allows fructose to be consumed in large quantities without signaling fullness. The liver processes fructose similarly to alcohol, converting excess amounts directly into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. Research published in the Journal of Hepatology shows that diets high in added fructose significantly increase liver fat accumulation within weeks, even without excess calorie intake. This fat buildup contributes to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which now affects approximately 25 to 30% of adults worldwide. NAFLD is no longer considered benign. It is strongly associated with insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and increased cardiovascular mortality. Once the liver converts fructose into fat, it packages that fat into triglycerides and releases them into the bloodstream. Elevated triglyceride levels are a well-established risk factor for heart disease. Data from the Framingham Heart Study and NHANES shows that individuals with high triglycerides and insulin resistance have a significantly higher risk of coronary artery disease, even when LDL cholesterol levels appear normal. Excess sugar intake also contributes to visceral fat accumulation, the metabolically active fat that surrounds organs and drives inflammation. One of the most underestimated consequences of daily sugar intake is chronic low-grade inflammation. Elevated blood sugar damages the inner lining of blood vessels, a process known as endothelial dysfunction. This damage promotes arterial stiffness and plaque formation. Large observational studies consistently show that individuals with high added sugar consumption have higher levels of inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. Chronic inflammation is a shared mechanism behind heart disease, stroke, neurodegeneration, and certain cancers. That should set off alarm bells in some of us. At the cellular level, excess sugar accelerates glycation, a process in which glucose molecules bind to proteins and fats, forming advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These compounds accumulate in tissues over time and interfere with normal cellular function. AGE accumulation has been linked to accelerated aging, kidney disease, joint degeneration, and vascular stiffness. Research suggests that individuals with chronically high blood sugar can accumulate AGEs at rates up to 2 or 3 times higher than metabolically healthy individuals. The metabolic consequences of sugar don't stop at the cellular level. They directly affect daily energy and mood. Roughly 1 to 2 hours after a sugar-heavy meal or snack, insulin drives blood sugar down rapidly, even overshooting the optimal range. This sudden drop triggers symptoms such as fatigue, brain fog, irritability, and renewed hunger. Controlled feeding studies show that meals high in refined carbohydrates lead to increased hunger and calorie intake later in the day compared to meals with balanced macronutrients. This blood sugar crash activates stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which signal the brain to seek quick energy. Predictably, cravings for sugar or refined carbohydrates intensify. Neuroimaging studies demonstrate that sugar activates dopamine pathways in the brain similarly to addictive substances, reinforcing habitual consumption. Over time, repeated blood sugar swings disrupt neurotransmitter balance and are associated with increased rates of depression and anxiety. Large population studies have found that individuals with the highest sugar intake have up to a 23% higher risk of developing depression. For individuals with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, this metabolic cycle becomes far more damaging. Insulin resistance prevents glucose from efficiently entering cells, leaving blood sugar elevated for prolonged periods. Chronic hyperglycemia damages nerves, kidneys, eyes, and blood vessels. Long-term data show that even modest daily consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages significantly increases diabetes risk. One meta-analysis found that each additional sugary drink per day increases the risk of type 2 diabetes by approximately 25%. For those struggling with obesity, sugar exacerbates hormonal conditions that favor fat storage. Insulin is a powerful fat storage hormone, and chronically elevated insulin levels suppress fat burning. This means that even when calorie intake is reduced, high insulin levels can make weight loss extremely difficult. The conversion of fructose into liver fat further worsens insulin resistance, creating a feedback loop where weight gain and sugar intolerance reinforce each other. Clinical studies consistently show that reducing added sugar intake improves insulin sensitivity and abdominal fat distribution even without calorie restriction. While this information can feel overwhelming, it is meant to be empowering. The body responds quickly to changes in sugar exposure. Pairing carbohydrates with protein, fiber, and healthy fats slows digestion and reduces glucose spikes. Reading labels helps reveal how easily added sugars accumulate throughout the day, often exceeding recommended limits without awareness. The American Heart Association recommends limiting added sugar to no more than 25 grams per day for women and 36 grams for men. Yet the average adult consumes nearly double that amount. Choosing whole foods naturally limits sugar intake while preserving metabolic stability. Whole fruits, despite containing sugar, deliver fiber, water, and micronutrients that slow absorption and reduce glycemic impact. Timing sugar intake also matters. Research suggests insulin sensitivity is higher earlier in the day, meaning sugar consumed with balanced meals is better tolerated than sugar eaten alone in the afternoon or evening. The daily impact of sugar is powerful, cumulative, and often invisible until damage has already occurred. What begins as a brief moment of pleasure can quietly evolve into hormonal disruption, inflammation, and metabolic disease. But understanding these mechanisms allows you to regain control. Managing sugar intake is not about fear or perfection. It is about informed decision-making. By respecting sugar's biological effects and adjusting how, when, and how often it is consumed, you protect your energy, your mood, and your long-term health. Is there a way to enjoy sweets without wrecking your metabolism? Make sure you check back for our video breaking down how to incorporate sweetness into a healthy, optimal diet for healthy adults over 60. And remember, the information in this video is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. It does not replace guidance from your physician or other qualified healthcare professionals. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your diet, medications, or lifestyle, especially if you have diabetes, prediabetes, or any other medical condition.